Creepypasta origins. The puppeteer. I had this doll for quite a while now. It was a beautiful porcelain doll. You know the way the most porcelain dolls look like. I was just like that. Wavy, long, blonde curls, black eyes, a beautiful pink and red dress with a typical bed headband with lace around the edges. It was a doll I received from my mother at an early age. At the age, I always thought it was such a pretty doll, a perfect look. My grandmother had almost 50 dolls of that kind, all of them beautiful, perfect porcelain dolls, but this one in particular, the blonde with the red dress, I will always remember. Cause this is the one that would be the death of me. I lived along for quite a while. I had just got into college, seeing my whole life lay in front of me, and all I had to do was just go and pick out what wanted. Easy as that. I was aiming for physiology, a subject that I had started to respect and enjoy the last 3 years. Seeing as my mother was a nurse, my dad was a therapist, it was an obvious choice for me. But moving so far away from all my friends and family wasn't as easy as I thought. Sure, my roommate was a nice person, but maybe not as chatty as I had hoped to. I wasn't a person to just sit quiet in my room and never speak until I had to. I enjoyed getting out and see friends, but I didn't have any time or friends around. No one would talk to me unless I wanted help from my teachers in school, or my roommate had forgotten to buy milk. It was lonely, to say the least. Homework was the only thing to keep me distracted from feeling lonely. I didn't have the time to try to even make friends. Friends was a silly thing after all. I didn't have time to go and party, maybe find somebody. It was worthless. Either way, and my dad would skin me alive if I didn't keep my focus on schoolwork. The only thing I had thought from the home to remind me of my family was the doll. The girlish toy was displayed on my desk in front of my bed, smiling against me when I needed someone to talk to or just watch over me as I slept. It was me and the doll that whole time. The fucking ugly doll. As time went on, I started to pull myself more and more away from any human contact as possible. The schoolwork was getting over my head, and the regret of going to here being filled my head. But I couldn't quit now and go home not after my parents had paid everything for my college and car to get here. I just had to stay and make the best out of it. I really tried hard, but each day the hatred of other people took the hold of me. I would need hours alone, just sitting in my room to cool off. It was getting harder to get out each day. My roommate despised me. I could tell, but I didn't blame her. I was acting like a jerk. I refused to take my share of the daily chores, wiping the floors, taking out the trash. But I couldn't do it. I was being pulled back into the dark hole. And with the loneliness came the paranoia. At first, I accepted being lonely, but it had reached the point where I started to realize my dumb behavior, trying to reach out to people among to tell them I wasn't feeling alright. There was only stress, and nobody had to take time to talk to a stupid college student. It was only the nerves. I hoped it was. I locked myself in my room, and I couldn't go out anymore. I had to send my teachers and cancel the classes day after day, but it didn't matter. They didn't send anything in search for me, so I just kept spinning in my room week out, week in. It was an evil circle I couldn't get out of. Then it happened. My room had been my cage. I wouldn't eat. I wouldn't even reach to the point where my roommate would come and knock on my door to see if everything's okay. But I didn't open it up. I just yelled back in replying that she would go away. She did. She didn't care enough to make a second attempt. She never knocked on my door again. It was just me and my doll watching over me and every breath I took. Then there was that night. This night actually. It was a night that I was so used to spending alone, I didn't even bother trying to turn on the lights as I stepped up from my bed and pulled on a sweater and a pair of untied Converse before I made my way out of my room in so many days. I needed fresh air, and my window was broken, unable to open. It was in the middle of the night, maybe even morning. It was still dark outside, so I just assumed it was still night, even though I hadn't checked the time yet. Couldn't care less. Anyway, it was a pain in the ass to come out of my room to not wake up my stupid roommate. All I needed was to get out for a minute or two to gather some air. Maybe go out and buy some cigarettes. I had promised myself to stop smoking, but lately, that was the only thing I had been doing, smoking. I only sneak out late at nights to go and get some new cigs. It was a bad thing, I knew, but it was the only thing to keep me going and kept me awake and safe. But the particular night, there was something strange. Someone had unlocked the gate out of the street. It hadn't happened before, and I thought the landlord held a hard hand to keep it locked all the times. Didn't bother. I just pushed the little red box out of my pocket and started smoking. The good thing about the night was no one was around. No one to annoy me with their stupid voices. It was quiet, maybe just a car driving by, but then no more than that. It was perfect. A few minutes after gaining some cold on my warm skin and some smoke inside my lungs, I decided to go back in and maybe try to watch some television. Nothing good aired at night, but it was always worth the try. I stepped back into the building and shrugged. At least the last bit of unwanted cold off, making myself ready to sneak back into my room. But as soon as I came to the staircase, there was something in the way, or someone. Someone was standing in the stairs. I had to admit, it did scare me to some point, but a second later, I was back to in my not give a single fuck state and tried to walk up the stairs without confronting the person standing in the way. At first, I thought it was my roommate, but the shadow of the person was too manly, too big to the petite roommate I knew. I knew she'd pass the odd stranger and just slightly bump my elbow into his, but he didn't move or spoke. He just stood there. It was creeping me out. The sincerity was too freaky. But of course, there was other students in the apartment building just waiting to scare the shit out of some other poor first-year student. But I wasn't the one to be fooled. But I didn't stop until I heard a sound. It was one of those sounds where it just caused your concentration to break shut. It was distracting, scary, scaring, uneven. I couldn't continue on, so I just froze in position and tried to turn around to face him. At first, there was a cracking sound, the sound that had startled me. Then there was a sobbing. A young man's voice of sobbing, but it wasn't human. Yeah, maybe to some degree, but the voice was pitching up, like it was breathing through a bad static television screen. I stood only a few steps away from the man in the shadows. I wanted to break away from my sudden frozen state of mind, but I couldn't. I was stuck, like my feet had been nailed to the stairs. I was trying to speak, but he spoke before I had the chance to. It was getting clear to see now, since spending some more time in the darkness helped out the vision to clear up. He was wearing some kind of jacket, torn but long, like he hadn't been able to cut it for a while. Kind of jacket. Black. Everything black. A sewn-up cap with strings falling out from a hole in the back, also black. His hair was torn but long, like he hadn't been able to cut for a while, or showered it. His appearance was eating inside of my mind, but his voice appeared like a dagger in my ears. When he spoke, he made off another static noise, like a broken radio, but he spoke in words, tried to calm me down. But it was already too. I was already too scared to try to bring myself to relax. You're alone here, aren't you? I swallowed hard. The thought of somebody spying on me this entire time was filling my head like urging vomit. Feeling disgusted by this man and his voice, I just shook my head. No response. I couldn't give him a reply. I should have, maybe. It was a chance this whole time situation for the better. Maybe I hadn't been here now. If I hadn't been here now, scared of my life, but I was. And I knew he knew that as well. But when I didn't give him the answer he expected, he turned to me, and his sight was one of the most terrifying yet satisfying faces I have ever seen. He wasn't scared or wounded in any way to make me feel uncomfortable, but his appearance, but his eyes and his mouth. There was a weird glow, a golden orange glow. It filled out of his eyeballs and mouth, his teeth shining through in a bright yellow light. It glowed in the dark and it cast a light across us. On the stairs, the floor, on me, and I could see his smirk and his gray painted face. This when I snapped. It wasn't human, and I had to get away from there. I broke through the invisible bonds and threw myself up the stairs, running up quickly as my untied shoes slammed against the wooden floor. I fled to my room without any other second thought. My roommate that I had been ignoring so many weeks would hear me and called the police. I closed the door after me and I locked the door. My stumbling feet bringing me across the floor into the desk, knocking my precious filmy doll on the floor. The porcelain broke, and I gasped in panic, trying to recollect myself in thoughts. There was no more noise after I had slammed the door to my room. No roommate coming after me, no weird glowing man in the stairwell. Just me and my broken doll, laying on the floor. I tried to scream or cry or call for any help at all. It wasn't real. I had become too crazy insane after spending so many months just being alone. It was just that happened. I was lying on the floor, broken, shattered in pieces. I didn't know what to believe. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor, pacing back and forth by crawling the best I could. The cigarettes from before now just sat like a needle in my throat now. I was thirsty, but I couldn't move on to the kitchen to drink anything. Maybe he was still there, still waiting for me to come out, but I wasn't moving out of my spot. I never did. But in an hour of complete silence in my room, I began to calm down and stand up to try to calm myself down. There was still that feeling of being watched, and I knew that feeling too well. The feeling of being paranoid and lonely all came down to this, a broken down. Once I remembered the doll being broken, I immediately started to try to patch it together. It was like the only thing I had in focus. My best friend, the doll, I managed to get a needle and a thread in my room and some glue to get the doll back to its former glory, but it wasn't easy. No matter how hard I tried, the doll would just fall back together. It became an endless attempt of nothing. I tried again and again, but it just would fall in pieces. My only friend. I became too tired of the sudden panic and the fixing of the doll. I just passed out on my bed, but I curled up together in a ball with a blanket over my head, somehow imagining that no monster under the bed could reach me now. All I wanted was to sleep. I didn't know he could come back. This time was different, however. This time, I welcomed it. I was tired of running all the time. I could rather die in my sleep than face another day being lonely again. And now that my only friend broken, what was I supposed to do? I was tired. The way he approached me this time, it was like he was asleep, but still I could control my body. like a lucid dream. I couldn't dare to step in another day. Tonight it would end, just like I had been afraid that it would. But I didn't care anymore. Didn't bother. I just wanted to have a long sleep and never wake up again, never face the loneliness again. He came back to me, with his hands guiding me from my bed. He wrapped his mind around mine as I tried to see, but the only thing I could see was his gray hands holding mine tight. He slightly, he, but slightly there was a sensation I wasn't sure I could feel of floating. Like a puppet, he cut 2 open cuts in my wrist, but it wasn't across, more like it was from the center of my arm and down. He reached for muscles, something to peel out and hang up to. The bad thing was I allowed him to do it. My struggle had become too much to bear with, and with the long pieces of muscles hanging out of my cuts on my wrists, he started to pull at them. He pulled at them like he wanted to control my body and arms. How it all came together. In reaction to my nerve systems and skeleton, he knew how it worked. Yet there was no pain that felt my hard body. There was another piece of my mind staying at ease again. It was a wonderful feeling. It was just like nothing else mattered. And as he can continue to cut me open and beginning singing, they call me the puppeteer. My fingers are thin and my hands are stained with my tears. For the puppets I steer with my strings and my dreams. Now I could see him clear. The man who I just hated with all my might, I now welcome to finish off my endless suffering. Maybe it had been he who had forced me into this thinking. Maybe he was the one to blame for everything I had done to myself. Was this all in my head, or was it real? They call me the puppeteer. I had no friends like you, for nobody saw the value of my friendship. But in the end, they all become my friend. They all came become my friend, with my strings, and dreams. It took me a minute. It only took me a moment to lose every sense of my touch. My nerve system has been crushed under the hand of this man, this thing, breaking every bone in my body. I could feel him twisting my ribs and twisting the hip bones. All of it to make it easier for him to turn him into what he saw me fitting to be. It was like the long pieces of thorn. Muscle was strings, controlling my limbs and my head falling from side to side. All I could see was his smile, so I smiled back. They call me the puppeteer. My body darkened, my eyes hunger of gold. In my eyes, no one is alone with my strings and dreams, but you shall be my friend too. The last feeling I could feel was his hand tugging hard around my neck, then snap. At first, I was afraid to see death approach me this way. I had never thought of it this way. I would have said no and refused if I could have decided it all on my own. But I didn't. I said yes. With a broken neck, death was just half a second away. Then there was nothing but a golden smile, his warm hand holding my strings up as my body fell. Earlier the other morning, my roommate found me dead. I had committed suicide by hanging myself in the fan in the ceiling. Assuring my death, I had jumped from the bed. Beside me was the doll, that broken porcelain doll with the red dress and lovely blonde hair. You may be wondering how I'm writing this to you right now, or how I found my way to connect you. I found it necessary to write down my story before I passed on. This is my legacy. This is what I'm leaving behind. I couldn't stand the loneliness anymore. I couldn't stand facing the problems on my own. It took so long, too long. Dear Mom and Dad, I'm sorry. I think the puppeteer is just like Laughing Jack. No one knows how Laughing Jack was created or how he became a Jack in the box. I think it's kind of the same thing for the puppeteer, but then again, it's my opinion. This is the closest thing I could find to an original.